So welcome to today's session on proposal writing and evaluations. We appreciate you coming. I know we have quite a bit more registered, so more will come in as we get started, but we'll get going. We do have a busy day today. If you had a chance to see, yesterday was the day that the FOA came out. We kept our eye on it all day, and we don't think it actually was available till late yesterday evening. So I know Sonia took the opportunity to look through it, and we'll be able to talk to it at some level today, but it is a lot of work to get through. But because this workshop will talk about proposal writing and evaluation, we expect that we will not be done at 10 o'clock. I know that you may have other commitments, so we will keep going and recording, and if you have to leave, we'll make sure that you get the link to it. It is going to be on our YouTube channel under the SBIR STTR workshop playlist, and we'll get that in the chat for you to have. So I hope that you'll stay with us as long as you can today, and anytime it's over, you can catch on your own. And then again, please feel free to reach out with any questions, and we'll go over it at the end, but we do have an office hours this Friday. So if you'd like to come to that to have some more in-depth discussion before the holidays, we'd love to have you, and it's a great opportunity to come. But thank you again for being here. If you haven't met me before, my name is Amanda Buchanan. I'm a program manager with the University of Arizona Center for Innovation. On the call with me is also Casey Carrillo, who is works on this program as well. She's assistant director for UACI. And we work together with many other power connectors to provide resources and support to applicants that are seeking funding opportunities under the Department of Energy. This is a map of all the power connectors in the US, and actually it's been updated since we put this together. There are now 20. And so we are really excited to work with so many great organizations to bring these resources. On this particular effort for SBIR, we're part of 5, and you'll be able to find some of their resources, workshops, and activities that they have going on. They have office hours as well. Some Arrowhead Center is actually offering a session tomorrow. And so if you have interest in any of those, please check those out and sign up for any of those sessions. I'm going to turn it over now to Sonia so we can dive into this and see how quickly we can get through it. But Sonia Von Hatt is a contractor with OpSpot, but she is also works with, I'm sorry, I said that wrong, Sonia, but you're a founder of OpSpot, and she contracts with us at UACI as our subject matter expert for funding strategies. And she is an expert in SBIR and STTR grants. She's worked with us for quite a while successfully, and she has a lot of expertise in this area. So I will turn it over now. Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you, Amanda. I guess because of the sake of time, she's done a great introduction about me. So let's go to the next slide. So today's pretty busy. We want to cover how to write proposals, as well as how the DOE will be reviewing your proposal today or after you submit it. So sorry, I've got a little bit of a sore throat today. Anyways, so we'll go over proposal writing strategy, the components of a typical proposal, and the 2 types of evaluation criteria with regards to the DOE, which cover administrative and merit. Next slide. So as Amanda mentioned, the funding opportunity announcement came out last night. And so I try to capture as much of the changes made. So hopefully they're all in there. If we find there's other things, we will make changes to the presentation, but today's going to be pretty long. So before you begin, is going to be important to discuss what you need to do before you start writing your proposal, and key planning steps and what kind of research and what would be your preparation plan, and some aspects of that will help you in the success of winning a proposal or writing a good proposal. Next slide. So read the entire solicitation. It's pretty long. I don't remember how many pages. The DOE did a good job outlining at the very beginning the changes with regards to other solicitations, including the fast track for this particular FOA. And they also highlighted in red throughout the solicitation a lot of important things and changes. Keep in mind the due dates, the page counts, the fonts, the margins. Learn what you need to do, the appropriate steps to submit, what registrations, what documents, formatting instructions, naming conventions. Learn everything you can about the different agencies or the different program offices you're going to be submitting a proposal. Make sure that you're eligible and read all the preparations, instructions, and requirements and the evaluation criteria. And if possible, we know that there's another file the DOE put out with the topics, and they've done webinars. Make sure you know who are the different office contacts. Next slide. Okay, so for planning steps, be prepared to spend about 10 weeks or more. Depends on when you started. And know that this is not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of effort, even if you know your subject matter. Writing and putting a proposal together, even if it is 15 pages, is not an easy undertaking. And expect to spend more than 100 hours, typically about 150 on average. Register early, start now if you haven't. There's a whole bunch of, well, not bunch, but many places that you have to register, starting with PAMS, grants.gov, sam.gov. But I'm not going to cover those here. They were covered on the previous webinars, but they're all outlined on the FOA. And keep in mind that registering takes a long time. Sometimes not only because you have to enter the information, but you have to wait for approval specifically with sam.gov. Make sure that you understand the requirements and that you have enough scientific literature and market research done. Understand the agency's requirements, develop relationships with the different program offices and the program officers or topic authors if you can, and write a compelling work plan. It's got to make sense and know what the research and development activities are going to be in that work plan. You also will need a commercialization plan or strategy. You're going to be developing financials, meaning a budget and the budget justification. And you need to have a good technical team. And you need to describe your equipment and your facilities and any other resource that's going to make the team stronger and your proposal stronger. And so primary questions you're going to be asking yourself: what are you going to do and how you're going to do it? Why is it worth doing? So why should DOE give you the money and what's that impact? Who are you going to be working with? Where you're going to be working? When you're going to be carrying out each task and how much it's going to cost. Next slide. So for the technical research, understand what prior awards have been made, who's been out there winning and who's been making those awards, and understand the previous topics so that you are going to know and be a subject matter expert on this. Build relationships, understand the requirements. Remember when we went through what a topic looks like, at the bottom of each topic, there's going to be a lot of references. Make sure you read them and did your research and understand who published it, why it was published, and how it relates to the particular topic. So when you're writing your proposal, you know what's the state of the art and what you're going to be writing about, right? And also do research on who your customer is. Next slide. For market research, make sure you understand all the topic identified commercialization areas, meaning who's out there, who has commercialized, who's got the state of the art, what is the state of the art, and who's using the technology or who would use the technology that you are developing, and who would be your commercialization partners. Next slide. Check, there's a question. Okay, not for me. All right. So as part of writing a proposal, I recommend you put together a proposal writing plan. So identify who's your team, create that proposal plan, and a master outline. Typically, an outline is going to be like a one-to-one almost match with all the components and files of all your application, right? Make sure that you know you're following the instructions and how many pages are consuming each of these documents, and make sure you don't go over them, because then you're going to be non-compliant. Create a proposal schedule with who's doing what, when, and conduct interim reviews of your proposal drafts all the way until you have a final proposal before you submit. And if you can, have independent reviewers, because if you all are reviewing the stuff, you're going to be biased. And after a couple of reviews, you won't see your mistakes or gaps in missing information in your proposal. I recommend you set up a weekly proposal meeting with your team so that you review the progress, and that you set up these dates of when you're going to be reviewing the interim drafts of your proposal. Next slide. So this is a typical or a sample proposal plan where you have the activities that you would have to conduct to write your proposal, and the due date and who's doing it. And there's another column that I would also put like status to know what's going on. And so this one here, I tried to make it match with the DOE documents and activities that would be important for your DOE proposal. So a lot of these activities match with what documents you have to generate or information you're going to need for your DOE proposal. Next slide. And if we had 10 weeks, this is basically what I would recommend you do. Review the topics, which you should have done by now. Reach out to the topic authors. They've given you webinars. They've given a list of people who are responsible, or an email address, sometimes a phone. Make sure you've already done that, because we're pretty much into a month since the solicitation, or not solicitation, since the topics came out. So I would have expected that you've done all this. I would be also working on that letter of interest right now. It's due on January 3rd. And basically most everybody is going to be on vacation next week, probably through the 3rd. So I recommend you work on it this week, hopefully, and get it done and submit it. Don't work that hard on this one. What you want to do is make sure that you're compliant against your topic and addressing the requirements of the topic, and you don't exceed the page count and the number of words for that abstract. And so if you were to do all this, you could take maybe a week break so that you can start on January 3rd, because then you'll have about a month to submit your proposal. And work on your commercialization plan, your budget justification. Do you have any partners, both for or subcontractors, or folks that would help you for commercialization, or would you need your technology? Start securing those letters, right? Don't leave it to the end. Some companies will take up to 2 weeks to a month because they have to go through a legal process to give you a letter of support. So don't wait till the week before the proposal is due. You should be working all that, and should be part of your commercialization strategy. And before, that month to month, do have at least a draft proposal completed. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And here's a sample proposal outline. Again, many of these bullets in here will match the requirements of what is needed for your full application package for the DOE proposal. So you could copy this and start, and then you can further bulletize it or itemize it based on your own company needs and the way your company operates. Next slide. So some bullets on keys to success. Be underconfident and over-prepared. So this is similar to the 80-20 rule. You're never going to be over-prepared, but just don't think that your idea is the best. You're in a very competitive environment here. There's going to be a lot of proposals submitted, and some topics far more than others. So you really have to give your best foot forward and wow your reviewers with your proposal and your idea. Start early, submit early if you can. The platforms sometimes get overloaded and Murphy's laws come in, and then suddenly your computer crashes or theirs crashes, and none of them are going to be good excuses for you to not be able to submit. Contact the program staff early if possible. Most agencies let you speak to their topic authors, but it's important you talk early with them so that you understand that you're meeting their requirements and their needs, and you understand why they wrote that topic. And then consider storyboarding for your outline and what are going to be your win themes, and write against the review criteria, right? And we'll go over the review points before we finish today, but these are basically the review criteria has got to be revolving around the innovation, who you are, your core competencies, your team, where you're going to be doing it with, and who you're going to be working with, as well as what is going to be your commercialization success and potential, and what impact you're going to give. That's going to be really important. Next slide. All right, before I go here, just a quick pause. Any questions so far? So I know I'm going very fast. Okay.
I don't have any in the chat.
No, I didn't see, and so I will keep going. So typical components, I see one from Conrad. Well, that's a hard one. Some people are really good. If you know what you're doing, then, start writing it up. It's got to be 2 pages, 500 words. Start with, a paragraph identifying the problem and relating it to why it's responsive to a particular topic, and then go into what is your innovation and high-level objectives and approach of your phase 1. And the most important part here is describing your innovation as it relates to your the topic that the DOE has put out on the solicitation. Yeah. So I've seen it, and this is, well, they mention on the FOA that the abstract should not be more than 2 pages, but the cover on the letter of intent is literally just like a header. It's just got to have your company name, who's the PI, who your collaborators, your business official. So it can become maybe like 5 or 6 lines. It shouldn't take too much. And then 500 words do not take more than 2 pages, right? So it gives you the opportunity to put in maybe a figure if you think it describes your innovation better. So I wouldn't be too concerned about the two pages, because 500 words will not go in more than 2 pages. Moving forward, I'm not going to talk about the cover sheet. That usually is information that goes online, and each agency does it slightly different, depends on the application package. But I'm going to focus today on what the narrative, which is typically called technical volume in other agencies, the DOE calls it a narrative. And we're going to be discussing in detail the bullets there, the why, the how, the when, the who, and the where, and how they relate to these specific bullets within your narrative or technical narratives for this proposal. I'm not going to go into cost volume or the budget or budget justification. Know that for the phase 1, you can't exceed 200,000 in some topics. I think a couple of topics out there will have up to 250,000. And if you're doing a fast track, I believe they said 1.3 million. If I got my numbers right, because I read it at 5 in the morning today. And phase 1, no more than 12 months. Phase 2, fast track, no more than 33 months. Phase 1, if you do a fast track and you are doing it for 33 months, the reason they're doing that is they're recommending 9 months for the phase 1 component of it and the 24 months for the phase 2. Right. And so make sure that that budget and your budget justification represents the effort for the amount of money and time you're asking for or you plan to spend. Okay. And who's going to be doing it. And depends on whether you've done phase 2s or not, the level of detail of the commercialization report will vary from company to company. Next slide. All right. Here we go. So the technical proposal, DOE calls the narrative. So you're going to be talking about the identification significance of the problem or opportunity. There's going to be a section for the anticipated public benefits, why your technology is going to benefit humanity and what's the impact. And then your technical objectives. Then you've got to have a detailed work plan and schedule. Who's going to be doing it, including the principal investigator, where you're going to be doing it, your commercialization plan, and like I mentioned, they call it project narrative. One of the things to keep in mind, this document outside of the commercialization plan is 4 pages long, and the rest, I believe, is 15 pages. For the fast track, the commercialization plan, I think, is up to 15 pages. And memory serves me right, I think they said the total narrative 22 pages, but I will have to check the FOA for that. Like I said, it was 5 a.m. Next slide. Okay, so when you're working on the identification and significance of the problem, first describe what's the technical problem and opportunity that you're addressing, and provide as much background information so that it makes it clear to the reviewers you understand what is the state of the art and what is the gap or the deficiency of the state of the art, and how you're going to fill in and make that improvement, and indicate very high level what's going to be your approach and how you're going to vary and what the opportunity here is to improve the state of the art, and describe why you're innovative and what are other benefits. And this first section's got to be the most persuasive, because if you put stuff that's not very persuasive, the reviewers are going to be already biased and they're not going to be very optimistic as they read the rest. So sometimes you can write this last because this is kind of like a very good executive summary, typically a couple pages. Next slide. Also define what the problem is briefly and how it relates to the topic or other topics out there based on what your research has shown and why the problem is not being solved satisfactorily to date, and how you're going to be addressing the solicitation requirements, and explain a little bit of how you're going to envision how you're going to transition your technology. And as you'll see on this presentation, sometimes I will make suggestions or notes. I'm a visual person. A figure or an image is worth a million words, they say. And if you put a figure that describes very succinctly what you're doing, how it relates to the stakeholders, why is it innovative, be very creative on this image. Because if I see an image and I get my aha from it, and it's a good aha, I'm already going to be positively biased, and I will want to read more. So spend some time on a good figure. Next slide. All right, for the anticipated public benefits, discuss technical, economic, social, and other benefits to the public as a result of the DOE spending on this technology and on your research, and how you're going to be carrying it forward into the phases 2 and 3. Who in your commercial sector are going to be impacted, as well as the federal government, when and if it makes sense, right? And what will be the product as a result of this funding, and what is the likelihood and how it's going to be going into market, and the significance it will make on your market. So this section probably will have about half a page of your proposal, but it's another one that will be very impactful. So I got my wow effect on the previous section, but now I really want to know, okay, fine. So who's going to benefit and why? And if you have the space, sometimes a table with features and benefits, this is a good place to put it, or in the previous section as well. It's just the balance of space and real estate. Next slide. All right, so objectives. Don't overload the proposal with 10 objectives. Have high-level objectives. I like them to be more like stuff that could be measurable, so that you can say, yes, I satisfied this objective. And this is what are the objectives, right? And how are you going to be able to quantify it? And what questions are you going to be answering here? And for the fast track, if you read the FOA, you're going to be having to separate objectives by which ones apply to phase 1 and which ones apply to phase 2. Make them measurable and describe how you're going to measure that success for each of these objectives. Well, you're going to do how you're going to measure the success in the approach later. But if you make them measurable, you're going to be able to do it in the next section. Do not overscope, because otherwise you're never going to be able to convince reviewers that you could do this in under 12 months and within your budget. And the overall goal is, with these objectives, is to satisfy the requirements of the topic you're responding to and what need you're addressing, right? So keep that in mind when you're creating your plan. I like to create a table that has objectives, number your objectives, the objective description, make it something that you could measure, and then a column with what questions am I going to address? And you're going to see why this is important in the next few slides. Next slide. So if you have your technical objectives and each of them have questions you're addressing, it will make it easier for you to translate each of those questions into one or more tasks, right? And if you think this way through, sort of like in a systems engineering process approach, is going to make it easier for you to outline your proposal and write your proposal. and it will be written in a way for reviewers to easily read and digest and understand what you're trying to do. And if you think about it this way, and as you write your proposal and your proposal plan or your work plan, you're going to be able to, when you're describing to task one, to track it back to what objective you're referring to, right? And that's going to be very important. Next slide. Okay, and so this is what I mean by creating a table, have the number of each objectives and what questions you're answering. And this is very high level. Each company is going to be different based on what you're building or what you're innovating. Next slide. Okay. So I mentioned previously, think of this as a systems engineering approach where you're going to have inputs, a process, and an output. And I will refer to this as an IPO, but not an IPO of your company, but inputs, process, and outputs, right? Next slide. All right. So all your tasks have an IPO, right? The inputs to each of these tasks are going to be like resources, data, people, what you're going to be using, where you're going to be using. Those are kind of your inputs. The process is your task description. What are you going to do with that information? And then the output is the result of that task, that milestone, and that measurement to the objectives and those questions, right? Did I answer those questions? And for instance, what is the performance? Did it generate that amount of kilowatts, for instance? And how well, right? Is it 100% perfect or is it 99? What's the level of accuracy? And you're going to be able to report on that. Next slide. So what is the task to be accomplished? Who's going to be doing the task? When will this task start and end? Where are you going to be performing the task? Why is this task important and needed? And how will the task be accomplished? Right? And all these questions, if they're addressed on each of the tasks, it's going to help you also create your cost proposal and your initial budget, because you're going to know who's going to be doing it, how much time they're going to be doing, what resources you're going to need, and it's going to help you create that budget. Next slide. All right, so once you have an understanding of your objectives, your questions, and what tasks, you use that to create your work plan and your schedule. So on the work plan section, you're going to be providing an explicit and very detailed description of your research approach and the work that's going to be performed. And if you're task-oriented, it's going to be able to do exactly that. And so, like I mentioned before, what will be done by whom, where, and how you're going to carry out that work. So during your phase one, all of these tasks, the biggest objective is to prove the technical feasibility of what you're proposing and that you're being responsive to that topic requirements. And why, if you do all this, why should it merit a phase two grant application? And at the end of your phase one, based on what you've accomplished, you're going to know what you'll need to do under phase two. So always relate your work plan back to your objectives. So what I like to do in each of the tasks is always make the reviewer know this task is addressing a particular objective or more. Sometimes they crisscross, right? So, and that's okay. You can have more than one task addressing more than one objective and vice versa. And what methods are you going to be using? So that way, it gives more credibility to your proposal. If you describe what methods you're going to be using and why you believe those methods are going to achieve success. And this is the biggest portion of your proposal. Next slide. So link the work plan to your technical objectives. If you have that table and on when you write on each task what objective you're satisfying, then you satisfy this requirement from the review criteria. So and it puts it all together and discuss which methods you plan to achieve for each task, what you plan to achieve. And keep in mind, the schedule for the phase 1 is no more than 12 months, and the one for the fast track is no more than 33. Make sure you bulletize the important milestones for each of your tasks. One thing I wanted to say here about the 12 months for phase 1, if you do more than 9 months for your phase 1, the phase 2 proposal is probably going to be due before 12 months. So you could submit a phase 2 proposal, but you probably have not completed your phase 1, and that's okay, but you're going to have to indicate that on your proposal. So that's one of the things you're going to have to weigh in with your team and what you want to accomplish. Should I do it in 12 months or 9 months? Because if you're not going to have a compelling phase 2 proposal without completing your phase 1, you might have to wait till the next cycle, and that might incur delays. So make sure that you understand all this, and all the details of these risks that you have to make a decision on are very well described on the current FOA. Next slide. So again, for the work plan, what tasks you're going to be performing, what answers you're going to be addressing, what are the outputs, which are basically the milestones, how long each task is going to take, who's going to make them, and where will be the work performed. Next slide. On the work plan, what I recommend is, as you describe each of this task, describe the task, what objectives it's satisfying or addressing, what milestones, the who, the where. The description basically is the gut and the meat, right, of this thing. It's not going to be one-liner. It possibly could be, substantial. And there's very many proposal writing strategies or ways of doing. This is one way, right? You could probably put on the work plan a whole background information, or have your task have very little information and then give the background information. Because remember, before I said you have to outline your methodology. You could do it either inside the tasks or outside. That is going to be your style, right? This is a recommendation to make sure that all the elements of your proposal are addressed. And it's one particular style. So don't think that this is the only way to write it. This is just how I recommend it. Excuse me. Next slide. Here's a sample schedule. This one here is 6 months, for example, and 9 tasks. But you will have it specific to your project. Next slide. All right. Before I go to key personnel, any questions on objectives and work plan? I went through that really fast. Keep in mind, we'll have office hours. So we'll have the opportunity for you to digest all this and sleep on it and think about it and come back and ask me questions later. All right, next slide. Oh, no, stay on this one. I haven't talked about the personnel. Sorry about that. All right, so this is like, if you're interviewing for a job, you're going to have your best resume, you're going to have done your research, and you're going to make sure that you have the qualifications to address the requirements of the solicitation, right? In this case, it's a team. Make sure that if you say you're going to do something, or you describe the methodology you're going to use or the approach you're going to use, make sure you have people who know how to do that, who has the expertise, who have the knowledge and the skills to achieve it. That's what the reviewer is going to look for. All right. And especially the principal investigator. If you have relevant publications, if any, make sure that you list for your key people what's the most important to make them look really good and capable of achieving what you say you're going to do. Next slide. Same thing with subcontractors and consultants. Why are you using them? What are they going to do? What's their role? How much are you going to pay them? And why? And their letters of support should indicate, or their letters of commitment should indicate all that information. If it's not in there and the DOE likes your proposal, they're going to come and ask for it anyways. So make sure that you have it all there. Sometimes during due diligence, they'll also go and ask, well, why are you using this consultant and subcontractor? Make sure that you have background quotes, or you have enough evidence to support why you're choosing someone over someone else. And the price that they're using or they're going to charge you is competitive. Next slide. Facilities and equipment. This is important as well, because you've got to be able to do the work you're going to do somewhere. And we've been talking to someone lately, and if you're looking like for a lab or for someone who has equipment, start finding those partners quickly if you don't have that capability in-house. Now, keep in mind, for both subcontractors, contractors, anything you've got to buy or lease or purchase or rent or partner with, the FOA has a description in detail of what are the constraints that you're going to be operating. And they're slightly different between phase 1, phase 2, whether it's SBIR or STTR, right? So SBIR, you can't subcontract more than 1/3 under a phase 1. STTR, you can, the rule is the prime company, the one that's applying, the small business, can do no less than 40%. So keep all that in mind when you're looking to who you're going to work with and how you're going to have all the resources needed. And you've got to have justification. And if you're going to be, if you're a client of the UACI, for example, they can give you a letter of support indicating what equipment and lab and facilities and what other kind of support they give their clients. So I just put that as an example, but you could have other incubators or accelerators or universities you're working with that could provide that, or national laboratories as well. But you need to partner with them like now, right? Because they're not going to do it for free either. And they're going to need to build the relationship with you and give you a budget. And it takes a lot of time for that. Next slide. Any questions? Not yet. What page are we on? 35. Okay. So on the commercialization plan for a phase 1, it's up to 4 pages long, and they have explicit instructions of how to write it on the FOA. It has a paragraph. The first paragraph, don't remember the exact words, but you're going to have to say we expect to generate this much revenue from sales and licensees over the next 10 years, something like that. Follow the instructions. But the most important part is the content. So you got to address the market opportunity, your intellectual property, and your company. And again, it's got to be compelling and well written, and it has to tell a well-defined story. So for the market opportunity, describe your company, your customers, how big is the market, how much you anticipate to sell, do you know who your competitors are and why are you better than them? So that's very important to know. Are you going to be generating intellectual property? And how are you going to protect it? And then, of course, describe your company and team in detail, and so that the reviewers are going to say, yes, this company has the capabilities to fulfill the requirements and accomplish the tasks that they say they're going to do. Next slide. Budget, don't overscope. And we've described a lot the different components of the application in the proposal and how to relate them to the budget and how to use that information so that you can estimate your budget as best you can. Make sure that you understand the difference between direct and indirect rates and labor. Work with your accountant. You're going to have to justify this if they come and want to give you an award. And don't exceed the budgets. That will immediately disqualify you. Next slide. So DOE also allows for technical and business assistance, or TABA. For the phase 1, you can ask up to $6,500. For a phase 2, up to $50,000. I did not really understand on the fast track how they're going to be working with TABA. They only described the phase 1 was going to be $6,500. Keep in mind for DOE, it's over and above the $200,000 or the $250,000 based on the topic. So if you're asking for $200,000 in TABA, it could go up to $206,500. Okay. But if you're doing a fast track, we'll need to ask. I think that they might ask you to describe the TABA if they're willing to give you the phase 2 component of your fast track. From what I read, it appears to be a gated process based on you being able to prove the feasibility and accomplish the phase 1 objectives of your fast track before they give you the continuation of the phase 2. Okay, so don't know specifically the details here, but just a shameless plug for me. If you want to work with TABA, I do TABA. I've been doing it for years with other customers. And then a question, is marketing included in TABA? So indirectly, yes, because typically under your direct costs, SBIR, STTR does not pay for marketing activities, but what they allow for you to add in TABA is maybe the market research, the creation of marketing collateral, possibly going to conferences. There's an extensive list of things, but like going to conferences, they won't reimburse you to go to the conference. They'll reimburse someone providing the service to go on your behalf. So there's all kinds of details. So it's like a yes, no kind of answer to your question list. So evaluation criteria, there's 2 types. There's the administrative, which we hate, and there's the technical merit reviews, but you've got to keep both in mind. Next slide. So for administrative, it depends on which agency you're responding. They're going to be slightly different. I kind of outlined here a few, focusing on the DOE. You can contact the topic authors or the topic managers directly. So listen to the webinars and other agencies. All right. Why is it important to talk to your topic authors? Because they might give you information that's not, it's in between the lines in the topic description. And you're going to understand why really, the real why the topic came out. Sometimes talking to someone or exchanging a few emails will save you hours of endless research where you might still not really get it. Right. And so that's why my biggest reason to talking. And you might find out that, my solution or my innovation really does not apply for what they're asking for. And you don't spend 200 hours writing your proposal. So, and, it's an opportunity for you to find out more. So was the last question about scaling up from a prototype to a full size. That, again, also depends on what you're doing. Typically, you don't build prototypes on a phase 1 because you're proving feasibility. So I would just leave the prototyping and the full scale to phase 2 and full scale to phase 3. Okay. Next slide. So in the DOE, you've known they've hosted webinars, they've put out the names of some of the topic authors. You can send emails. If you haven't talked to them and you have questions, do it ASAP because the holidays are coming up and they only get busier as you approach the end of when the solicitation closes. Next slide. So do's and don't talk about your company experience. Don't ask things that are already in the solicitation or in the topic description. It drives them nuts or crazy and you already put them in a bad mood. Don't talk too much. Learn to listen, right? You can start a conversation with, building a relationship or it's difficult to come up with the right set of questions, but if somehow there's still reasons as to why, then I would start there. Do ask questions to clarify the topic. Anything, if they don't specify measurable objectives, maybe ask them if they have that in mind. Maybe you can ask if certain approaches are of interest over others if they haven't outlined those in the topic. And I put in here, when you work for DoD, it's always important to know if they have a transition or a platform where they want the technology. It might not apply for DOE. Next slide. So administrative review process, read all the solicitation. It describes in the most cases everything you need to do and how and where. And it's very important to understand the rules with the formatting requirements, the page limits, the margins, the size of the fonts, what has to go in the header, what goes in the footer. Make sure that you verify if you could put letters of support, DOE does, NASA doesn't. You've got to be able to qualify as a small business, that your principal investigator has the right qualifications, ownership qualifications in terms of IP, who owns them, why, what you're going to be doing, budget limits and restrictions. Make sure you don't exceed those. And know what is required of the content. That's why it's so important to do those plans and outlines and due dates and times. If it says 11:59, don't submit it at 12:01. or 5 p.m. Eastern versus 5 p.m. local time. Believe it or not, there's those two. There's a question. Providing feasibility as main objective for phase 1 and developing prototype as main objective for phase 2. Is that applicable to all agencies? In general, that is what a phase 1 and phase 2 is about. Sometimes companies go over and beyond what you should do for phase 1, depends on the state of development when they start. Sometimes in phase 2, it goes beyond the prototype. Sometimes you develop a prototype and you prove that it works in a relevant environment. So, because you could build a prototype, but you never test it. Where does it work? Just on the lab, or is it going to work outside? It is all very specific to your technology and the needs of your customer and what you can really do for the period of time and your budget. Like I said, some technologies, the almost $1.5 million is not sufficient to be done in 3 years between a phase 1 and phase 2. So you have to have a compelling story, and in your transition and your commercialization plan, describe where and how you're going to get the additional funds to actually be able to have a prototype that can be demonstrated in a relevant environment and in the actual environment, and how you're going to scale. So listen, the answer is it depends. But in general, yes. Next slide. So for the DOE, you're going to have to include your project title, you're going to do a letter of intent, and you have to include a commercialization plan for the phase 1 up to 4 pages. And for the fast track, I believe I said it was 15. Next slide. All right, did we lose anybody, or we're holding on? Okay, this is a typical application list. And I took it out of the last year from the tutorials. It might be slightly different in terms of your budget limits. Okay, but I think you could use something like this when you're creating your proposal plan, but go and find out. The DOE provides this checklist. And then you know that you are going to be fulfilling the requirements, at least the administrative one, right? Okay. All right. So let's go into more of what the review criteria when it comes to merit. There's the innovation, technical merit, the ability to competitively carry out your project, and the impact. So next slide. So before we go in here, I wanted to ask any administrative questions. All right. So innovation here, they're going to judge you on how innovative your idea is and the approach you're going to be using, and its significance to scientifically and technically. Is it challenging what you're doing? Is it risky with high impact? And how well you describe it, right? Because you might have a great idea, but you don't know how to tell your story and you wrote a very weak proposal. It will be reflected on the different sections when you're talking about your innovation. So that's basically one of the most important parts of the proposal. Next. So the ability to competitively carry out the project has to do with the qualifications of your team and the resources with your equipment and facilities, and the soundness of your work plan. Does it make sense? Can you do it? And how have you justified that the money that the DOE is going to invest in you is going to be able to be accomplished for that research effort. Basically, it goes back to your tasks and approach on your work plan. Next slide. So then, how do you evidence the impact and the technical and economic benefits of the proposed work? How likely is it that you're going to be able to market your product or your innovation and process? And how likely is this going to attract further development from SBIR, other agencies, other investors? And they've want to also look that you have a data management plan for the proposal, and there's plenty of information on what to include on a data management plan if you have one on the FOA. Next slide. So here for the fast track applicants, they're also going to be looking in your phase 2 commercialization plan. Those 15 pages, you can go in depth into those market opportunity, your company, your competition, intellectual property, and finance and revenue model. Next slide. All right. And this is additional information that's on the FOA. And in here, what was different from last year is that they're adding in the program policy factors. They want to make sure that they're also promoting diversity of institutions receiving awards, as well as promoting institutions who have not received any awards yet. So here's where things are going to also get even more competitive, because we're having a whole bunch of new companies. And I think it's great that now, more people know that this exists and are going after this type of non-dilutive funding, but it just will make it more competitive for everyone. And diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of impacts and benefits are going to be starting to be looked at for as part of reviews. So on your anticipated benefits, if you can discuss that, if it makes sense, right? If it's applicable to your organization and to the innovation, do mention it. It's important. It really is. I believe that diversity inclusion is going to make us all better in terms of having the opinion of folks from other organizations and skill sets. It really does make a difference across the board. So consider all that when you're writing your proposals. And let's see. I think we could go to the next slide. So we're almost wrapping up here, writing to the evaluation criteria. So here's where it's important to, when you write your proposal, you know what they're going to be judging you against. So go back to the review criteria and make sure that you are addressing all those items and all those requirements as you tell the story, right? So use win themes and, the ability to solve, improve this feasibility. And can you provide that, does it say I'm plugged in? Yeah, sorry. I got a battery notice. Can you provide the innovation, how you're going to be providing it? Discuss how how strong your team is and how with your team and your commercialization plan, you're actually going to be able to commercialize and be able to describe what are the benefits and advantages of your technology, knowing the current state of the art and potential competitors. Next. All right. In summary, start early, read the solicitation, create a proposal schedule, follow it, right? Don't spend the time putting together something you're not going to follow. Follow it. It will help you. Schedule reviews with your team. It makes a difference. Don't wait till the end and find out that after you have a review, it's too late to make all the changes you need. Request those letters of support early. Don't underestimate your effort that's going to be required to write a proposal. It doesn't matter how good you are at writing proposals, start early. And remember that there's both the administrative as well as the merit review. And your administrative review can make you if you don't follow all the requirements there, it could make you non-compliant, like the size of your font or having an extra page in your proposal, right? So make sure that you do it and you follow all the FOA rules. And unfortunately, the administrative, because of all the instructions and all the applications and all the information they're asking, and now they're asking much more after the reauthorization, it takes a lot of time. So don't wait to fill out the information online till the day the submission is due. And don't forget to wow your folks that are reading this. Any questions? Next slide. And I think, Amanda, if you want to take it over from here, if not, I can wrap it up too.
No, happy. I'm a little glitchy today, so hopefully you can hear me, but I've turned my camera off to try to help. Can you hear me okay? So the topic webinars have already happened and they're recorded, and you can see those on the page that Casey dropped in the chat early on in the conversation today. And also, of course, if you're a first-time applicant and you'd like some extra support, DOE has the Phase 0 option, and that is something you have to apply for, and you can get that link here on the slide. I will also say that today when the FOA was released yesterday, there's also the opportunity to sign up for a DOE hosted webinar on Friday. It'll be at, I think, I think I had it up that it was around noon standard time, and so that's a great opportunity, actual administrators. So please take a minute to the topics. These are the FAQ emails that you can send over questions. You can send them, we share them with these departments and they list them, the offices. Again, just a reminder that we are working as a power connector with DOE as part of the SBIR, STTR, America's Seed Fund. And we have been contracted to specifically provide support to the solar and water topics. But again, we have been supporting others in wind topics, vehicle topics, and others. So just to end today, thank you for hanging with us for this long.